Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. It gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll even distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Welcome back to another episode of It Is What It Is. I am your host, Cody Kelly. Look, connect with me. I appreciate my audience. I appreciate you all out there who are listening. But if you want to keep seeing amazing content, you got to do two things. You got to follow me on Instagram at CVMK33, and you got to connect with me on YouTube. And soon as the link below pops up, at CV Space K, where all great content is seen, heard, and felt. I have an amazing author, amazing man. He's the former chaplain of the Chicago Bulls. He has a new book out, The Bible, Basketball, and the Bulls. Go cop that. We are going to get into the inspiration behind the book. We're going to discuss the content of the book, and we're going to get into some, controversial characters that have kind of, evolved in recent days with a few comments from Hall of Famers. So with that being said, Elder Bradley, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much for taking the time to be on this. But like anything, I always start off with every time I interview an author, what inspired you to write the book?
Well, that's an interesting story because once I retired, I had really, I don't want to say wash my hands of everything, but people kept asking me. I would put these little quirks and these little stories and these pictures up on my Facebook page. And people kept saying, you should write a book about it. You should write a book about it. And they kept repeating. Matter of fact, one fellow even said, the Lord told me. He told him to tell me that I should write a book about it. And so I began to seriously think about it. I said, I don't know how good my memory is. Again, you're talking about 37 years. But I began to start writing. And once I did, a lot of things began to come back. I don't want to say the book wrote itself, although that argument could be made, because right. As fast as I thought about stuff, I began to remember stuff. And I began to remember some of the most outstanding portions in that time there, particularly our first championship year when I had a chance to lead the team in the Lord's Prayer on national TV in the locker room after our first victory. So I began to write. And like I said, I figured when I would write it would maybe get 60, 70 pages, maybe 100 at the most. Well, the book wound up being 184 pages. And even now, after it's finished and published and printed and out there, I'm still remembering stories that I kind of wish that I'd put in there, but I just couldn't remember them until which. But the inspiration came from people telling me that I should do it. One particular lady said, somebody wants to hear your story. And I didn't really think anybody was interested in hearing it, But sure enough, it appears the response to the book has been positive. And I guess there are people that want to know the insight of what it was like ministering to the Chicago Bulls for those 37 years.
Perfect. Look, I've had a chance to get into it. You covered your journey of how you became a chaplain. I know I covered this last time because, I stated in our first connection, I said, you can't just go to LinkedIn and apply for the chaplaincy, right? It doesn't work that way. You talked about how you were invited and basically kind of how God opened up a door. And then you just found yourself. Your book covers how you got there. It covers filling in. It covers the revival that you preached, the sermon you preached at the AME church. But I wonder, was it like after you got introduced, after you met and you did the prayer with the players, and then this kind of opportunity came about, was it a sit down conversation you had to have with management? I mean, like how does chaplaincy and sports, like how do those worlds connect?
Well, the head chaplain, the one who I started with, my mentor, Reverend Henry Souls, he did all of that. The procedure at that particular time was we were covered. Our covering was the media. And what he would do, and then what I would do as well, at the beginning of the season, I think we had to submit a letter requesting that we do, just like any sports person did. If a media wanted to cover the Bulls that year, they had to submit a letter, who they were with, and request credentials. We had to do the same thing. The first couple of years, Henry did it. Then eventually I started doing it. But after a while, I became such a fixture there until I never had to do it again. I think I probably did it maybe my first 5 years. But afterwards, I became a fixture there. Everybody knew me, particularly the PR man, Tim Hallam, who headed the PR. And so I never had to do that or go that route again. Even when I brought my assistant on, Paul, the late Paul Riley, who just recently passed, it was just my recommendation. And so credentials were issued that way. In fact, every year when I would go down from that point on, when I would go down to the first exhibition game, I would just go to the press gate and they would have the credential for me. And I would just simply take it, wore around my neck for the rest of the season. But again, the start of it, which was before my time when Henry Souls, among others were there, petitioned the league with the backing of players like Bobby Jones, players like Dr. J with the Chicago Bulls, the late Dwight Jones, who played with Bulls, Artis Gilmore. These men were all in favor of having this program in the NBA. And so a few of the ministers, again, before my time, in conjunction with the players, petitioned the league, and this is how we were allowed to get started.
That makes sense. So my question is, so, you guys build this kind of union, right? Right. That is really catering to the needs, the spiritual needs of the players. But, the game got bigger, to the point now, like everybody, is unionized. Everybody is represented with an agent. You can't walk into that $1 billion industry, right, without going through the proper channels, right? Yeah. What has gotten better about chaplaincy, and then what hasn't gotten better, or what has gotten worse, I should say?
Well, I think, again, the mainstay of the chaplaincy is the interest of the players. And if the players lose interest, then I think it pretty much would make us history, which again, so far has not happened. There are strong Christians in the league. When I was there, we had a guy like Michael Redd who played with the Milwaukee Bucks. Right. Yeah, Michael Redd was a strong Christian, a strong brother. In fact, he would always request that I give him CDs of my preaching. He would listen to me while he was on the road. And when he come back to town, he said, man, I really enjoyed that. Kevin Ollie played a short time with us here in Chicago. Yeah. Strong, devoted Christian. Irvin Johnson, not Magic Johnson, but Irvin Johnson played with Milwaukee and Minnesota. He was responsible for keeping the players active. And so what has to happen is once we start a season, and I was always make my point to be there for maybe the first exhibition or two, even if we didn't hold a chapel session, to introduce myself to the players and to encourage them, because the lifeblood of this ministry is the participation, of the players. And so I would encourage that. One of the things we also did, and I learned this from Henry Souls, to get one player to be the chapel leader. Now, mind you, I remember my mindset when I first came there. I figured the chapel leader had to be saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, and that wasn't always the case. A lot of them were not that into it like they should have, but they were committed Christians. They were faithful attendees of the chapel, and so using that to our advantage, encourage the other players. Now, that fellow when I first came was David Greenwood. In fact, David Greenwood would actually, when I would make these little gospel tracts and give to him, he would take them to the locker room and put them in each player's locker. So if they didn't attend chapel, they still got a tract of what we ministered about that night. Now, sometimes the strength of the chapels, and I think I probably dealt with a little bit of the drawback that could happen, but the strength of the chapels was being faithful. And I remember even saying to the younger guys that came along as we in the meeting, one of our last meetings, last time I met with them, was to encourage them to always be there. Let the players know that you're there, even if your participation in a particular year is low. In my 37 years, there were some years when I had full participation from practically all of the team, to the time where it's maybe down to one or two that I could depend upon. And so my admonishment to them was to always be there and to be faithful, even in lean years. Sometimes your chapel players get traded away. I mean, I've had that happen where guys that were more faithful to my chapel, they suddenly get traded away, like Kevin Ollie in that case. Who's the other fella? Not True Holiday, his brother. I can't remember his name right there. But he was, that's right. That was yeah. And he got traded. And so there went one of my most faithful attendees. But again, the main thing that I discovered is being consistent. being there, and sometimes you're called upon because management knows you're there for things other than chapel itself. I don't know if you got to the part where I had to specifically minister to Tyson Chandler when I was called by management. John Paxson sent word, find the chaplain. Paxson had gone through a situation where a couple of his friends were killed that night. Not that he was there, but he got word that they were killed. And I can't remember exactly what it was. And when he came to the game tonight, they could tell that he just wasn't right. So Paxson said, "Where's Scott?" He knew me by first name, of course. He said, I'm going to let you talk to the chaplain. Of course, I knew Tyson. He'd been attending my chapels. And the very fact that I was there meant that there was the opportunity, if you want to call it that, to minister specifically to him in the coach's office because of what he had gone through. And again, I when that incident happened, I really felt my worth as a chaplain. As I stated in the book, because I realized that management understood the importance of my being there and that they needed my services. Well, one of the things that I was reminding them of in chapel is that this moment is a fleeting moment. Henry Souls like to always use the illustration like Jesus. Today they're saying Hosanna, and before the week is out, they're saying crucify him. There's cycles. And again, there's cycles in life, of course. There's cycles in life. There's cycles in sports. There's cycles in the individual of the player, the individual life of the player. And I always like to keep them grounded to realize you can be up today, but tomorrow you can be down. Don't let this go to your head. Don't let enjoy the moment, but always remember that just like there's a season of everything going well. There's also a season where things might not be going so well. And the very folk that cheered you and made an icon out of you will now be saying crucify him, get rid of him, trade him. I saw that with John Paxson when he became the general manager. When John Paxson became the general manager, the people cheered. They gave him a standing ovation because they remember him, of course, being the hero of the playoffs and the finals. And people would say, give John Paxson the job. He knows the team. He knows the structure. He knows this. Well, of course, when the thing started going pretty bad for the team, then they were asking for his head. Fire Pax, fire guard foreman. He was another guy that they brought on. So those type of cycles, I try to keep them away. And of course, some of the things I realize, some of the things that I say to them at that moment, which is with anybody, some of the things you say to people at the moment, they may not get it right away, but they'll remember it when the cycle begins to change. And so one of my hopes in there is that guys that may have only been there for a season or two, that I left something with them or gave them something that when they got further down the road, and even when their playing days are over, when your playing days are over, we used to have a joke, a running joke amongst the sports writers that I would sit and talk with sometime. They talk about the people that are no longer in the league. And one guy said, I'm sure people go up to you and say, who did you used to be? Because again, that name means nothing now. It may have meant something back in the day. But of course, with a guy like Michael Jordan and the championship years, those names last a lot longer, obviously. But a guy who may come into the league and have a hot moment, hot streak, he injures himself, it's all over. And all that glamour and that glory and that glitter is no longer there. And the people will, say, who did you used to be? In other words, you're not who you one time were. Well, again, these are things that I would remind the guys sometime in ministering to them in the chapel sessions, to keep your feet on the ground, to remember who you are, to remember where you came from, and don't think that this is going to last forever. It's a fleeting moment. It's for a season. All of the money, all of the fame, all of the glamour. And then, of course, I would give them the scripture that said, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? And I would emphasize to them the importance of putting God first and being saved. That was my very first message that I preached when I did the chapel from St. Matthew 6:33, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added on. So that was a reoccurring theme that I did with them throughout, and particularly in the losing seasons. It was easier to relate that message in the losing seasons than it was in the winning seasons. But just like there were winning seasons, there came losing seasons as well. So the cycle turns in sports, in life, in the game.
What was it like ministering to him?
Well, Jay Williams was very receptive when he first came in. When I first met him, when they came in, I mentioned to him to chapel. He said, I'd love to come. Because I always believe in praying even before the game. And so he was one of my faithful attendees. I got to meet his mother, and his mother seemed to appreciate very much what we did. Matter of fact, every time his mother saw me, she would hug me. I didn't get to meet his father until the tragedy, and I'll tell you about that. But one of the things about Jason Williams, And he went by the name Jay because there were other Jason Williams in the league. I think there were two others, Jason Williams. So he just went by Jay Williams. But he always wanted me before the game to pray with him on the bench before the introductions were made. So I'd always stand close by to the team bench. I'll be sitting at the press table, which is just right next to the team bench. And I would go and I would pray with him right before the game. Sometimes he even would get on his knees. Again, usually a lot of people may not have saw that because, again, he was in the midst of the team guys standing around the bench. But he always wanted me to do that. When he had his tragedy, I was the only one that was allowed to go up to visit him because I was talking to some of the players about it. They said we didn't even get to go up. They wouldn't even let us go up there and see him. I think management might have went up. And when I first went up to see him, he was at, Masonic Temple, Masonic Hospital or something like that on the north side. When I first went up there, his father didn't know who I was and asked me. And then his mother saw me and she said, "Oh, let him in. That's the chaplain." And again, she hugged me again. And I went and I ministered to Jason. He was laying there in some type of traction, it looked like. And he really looked pretty banged up. I prayed with him. He wanted me to minister to him and his fiance, and I did. I came back. I made a second visit to him. And then as he began to recover, I think I saw him because this happened in the summer. By the time the season started, he was on crutches. And that was the last time I saw him. But I would ask Chris Duhan, who also played at Duke, who was on the team, how he was doing. And I was sending word to him. And as a result, he lost his lateral movement. So he's never able to play in the NBA again. And it's always a question of what if. What people don't realize is that a lot of those things that happen, that they're in contracts that the team uses to cover itself to prevent things like motorcycles, skydiving, mountain climbing, something that could put your life in danger. The team very easily could have forfeited his contract, but they didn't. Nice of them to do that. They bought his contract out. But he's never able to play in the NBA again. I think the last I heard, he was doing color analyst on ESPN, I think. Right. So he still is part of the game itself. But it was a tragic situation. And of course, you always wonder what could have been had not this event taken place. I don't even know. Again, sometimes guys, again, when they're young, they run into a lot of money. They have a tendency to do foolish things. I don't know if he even knew how to ride a motorcycle, but hey, he could get one and look good. He got it and crashed it and crushed his pelvis, I think is what happened. And so that was it. It was tragic, but again, just like I administered, you're riding high today and tomorrow something could happen and it's all over. And that was a lesson I think that a lot of guys did learn in that as a result of that tragedy.
So let's switch gears. Scottie Pippen has been OC lately, and I think that's the best way to say it. Scottie has written a book. Hope he's aware of your book. And Scottie is claiming that he didn't just do. Phil Jackson made a mistake in giving Tony Kukoc the ball instead of him. That he was the real leader in the locker room, not Michael. He even accused in a Today interview that Phil Jackson was racist. I don't believe any of that, what Scottie said, right?
Yeah.
What happened? Because you saw Scottie when he was Scott. When he was Scott Maurice Pippen, drafted in 87, and then you saw the maturation of this personality. What happened there?
Well, I pray for Scottie. I think about him periodically because when he first came to the team, he and Horace Grant they came to the team together, and they were very faithful in my chapels. They were very faithful in attending. In fact, during that championship run of the 12 players, I had about 80 guys that were coming on a consistent basis, including Craig Hodges and Cliff Livingston, Scott Williams, B.J. Armstrong, like I say, Scottie, Horace. Those guys were always there during my chapel sessions. Along the way, Scottie stopped coming. He got slowful. And I remember the championship night before the game, we were in Los Angeles, and I sat down talking and said, Pip, I said, you get something great is about to happen to you, man. Don't forget the Lord. I said, look at the Lord has blessed you. Look at where the Lord has brought you from. You're about to win a championship. And I gave him that straightforward talk. And that night he did come to chapel. He had to leave to get his ankles taped, to get tape before each game. But he was there for the most part. But I noticed a change in him as he got more successful, as he became more successful. He began to change. Now, he was always friendly to me. Again, he's never avoided me. He's always friendly. But I noticed that change. And I think that what happened was that when Jerry Krause began to recruit Tony Kukoc, Pip made the statement on The Last Dance. I think it was him and Michael Jordan. I think it was Pip that made the statement that, we're the guys that have won these championships for you, Jerry. We're the guys and you're just going to neglect us and go all out and bring this guy to the team that nobody really knows and push him up into the stars. So I think there was that riff initially. Now I understand now Pip says him and Tony Kukoc are good friends. Tony was a good guy. In fact, the reality was I don't think here in America we actually ever saw Tony Kukoc's talent because, again, he was playing with guys just as good as he was. But he was an outstanding player in Europe. But I think that because Pip, as he stated, was the leader of the team, that he should have been given the opportunity to take the last shot. Now, I don't think it was fair to call Phil racist. But again, you have to think the mindset of the way Scotty felt about a lot of things, because I guess he felt he was cheated of an opportunity, not given the opportunity to be the leader of the team. And it was suddenly abruptly given to Kukoc, who for the first 3 years was not part of that team, And so this outsider comes in after we've already established ourselves as a championship team, as the best in the world. And then we bring a guy in and we want to make him the hero. Well, I'm sure I can understand. Now, I don't say I agree with it, but I can understand Scotty feeling cheated. I don't think it was the right thing to sit out and, because, and I understand what happened was afterwards that Bill Cartwright in the locker room gave a very forthright speech and said, Scotty, you let us down. We're a team. And Pip cried about it. I remember the post-game press conference. We were in the press room there, and Phil addressed it very directly and said the reason why Pip was not on the floor is because he chose not to be out there. And then he abruptly got up and walked out. Phil Jackson did. So he was miffed about it. I think if Pip had kind of, in The Last Dance, kind of softened it up and said, I regret the move I made, people would have forgotten about it. But instead he said, if I had a chance to do it again, I'd do the same thing. Well, he doesn't appear to be remorseful. He doesn't appear to be repentant. And now in the book, he's saying these things. I don't know if he's trying to sell books, but I think personally, I think it's unfair to say that Phil Jackson was a racist. I just don't think that's fair.
Did you suspect earlier that there might have been a rift maybe between him and Michael? Because sometimes on the outside looking in,
all that type of rift. In fact, if anything, there's more of a rift between Horace and Michael, Horace Grant, because Horace would stand up to Michael. You understand? And again, I went into the practices, but I understand that Michael ran the practices and was hard on people. And he admitted Horace wasn't apt to take all that stuff. But I do remember a conversation with Horace one time when he was saying that I'm trying to think who else wanted to fight with Michael, and he said they had to pull him away because even though they had differences, Horace said, even though I had differences with Michael, I realized this man is the franchise of the team, so I can tell him how I feel about it and get in his face and talk and woof, He said, but I wouldn't go fight with him and hurt him because I realized this man is the team. And I'm trying to think who the other player was that they said they had to restrain him because they realized don't fight with Mike. Mike would haul off and hit somebody else. He punched out Will Perdue. He punched out Steve Kerr, So, I mean, he wasn't one to back down either. But I never saw, from my perspective, any rift between him or Scottie Pippen. Pip knew he was good. He developed. He wasn't that good when I shouldn't say he wasn't that good. And put it this way, when he first came to the team, and I remember it quite well, he had the potential. And what I find with a lot of guys when they come into the league, depending on where they come, they've got potential to be great players, but if they're in the wrong system or the wrong coaching staff, like Kevin Lockery. When I first started, Kevin Lockery was the coach. He did more to destroy guys' careers, looked to me like, than anything else, because he had ego like they did. And I talk about in the book how the genius of Phil Jackson was he knew how to relate to each player, whereas Kevin Lockery wanted to let everybody know he's the boss and step on their neck if need be. I mean, that was his attitude. Mm-hmm. So between Pip and the other guys, I didn't see any rift or any jealousy that I saw. But I think probably, when the season is over, when it's all said and done, when we look back on it now, him as a player, he probably thinks of things that it could have been done differently. And to be honest with you, I look at a lot of things in my situation there that could have been done differently, So I guess all of us feel that some of us react differently than others. Some of us think differently about it than others. So, that's all I have to say about that. I saw no indication of any rift between him and Michael Jordan at all.
So my last question, 37 years in chaplaincy, you met a lot of great players. You had relationships with these players. You prayed over and ministered to them. You have impacted the NBA. What do you think your legacy is? Not just for the Chicago Bulls, but the NBA as a whole? Because arguably, and this is, as an outsider looking in, and I said this when we interviewed the first time, I said, football chaplains are known. Like, some of them are like celebs, right? They're like celebrity chaplains. Mm-hmm. Basketball chaplains are not known. You might be the most visible, like, you saw you at the WGN games. People recognize you. They saw you in the docuseries. So you might be the most visible NBA chaplain ever. What do you think your legacy is when you look back?
Well, if I could keep it limited to a man of God, I never got in any scandals. I never got in the middle of things. There is one incident that I'm kind of not very proud of. I talk about it in the book, where one of the security guards tried to dress me down in front of my daughter, and I didn't take too kind to that because I wasn't going to punk out in front of my daughter. So I may be a man of God, but you're not going to come in here. And again, it's in the book. And so what wound up happening was I got in his face and he got in my face, and we went back and forth. Now, again, I didn't get profane. I didn't use no profanity. I didn't cuss. But I let him know, buddy, I'm a man, and you're not going to dress me down in front of my daughter. That just ain't going to happen, and it blew over. Again, I talk about it in the book. I hope that people will look back and remember me in that field, particularly the ex-players, remember me as what they would call me. They'll call me Rev, even management and some of the security people that all knew me knew that I was one who lived according to what I preached, that I was not hypocritical, that I was not out hustling the players and conning the players, trying to get money out of folks and lying to folk and all that kind of stuff, because I tried to maintain a holy lifestyle, a godly lifestyle there, whether I was in the locker room, whether I was in the media room, among the medias. In fact, since I've done this book, of course, a couple of the blurbs you have on the back there of the book were from two guys that were with the media: Fred Mitchell with the Chicago Tribune, Jim O'Donnell with the Suburban Herald. These guys knew me, and they were nice enough to give a blurb to me and to the book on the back of the book, endorse the book. In fact, I just talked with Jim O'Donnell today. Instantly, I misspelled his name, McDonald. It's not McDonald, it's O'Donnell. And I apologize for that, and I'm going to straighten that out on my next printing. But he said today that he even featured it in one of his columns and plans to do it again as the season starts. So there were good relationships that I had there with most of the people. A couple of them maybe not as good as others, but it's only because I guess they didn't appreciate what I was doing. Right. I had no real run-ins with anybody except Jerry Krause. And again, I talk about that in the book, and that soon blew over. He calmed down after our initial encounter. So I hope that the legacy that I left will be that I was a man of God. And secondly, that I was a black man who stood tall. Again, I didn't dress with my pants falling down. I didn't come up with a lot of crazy hairstyles. I always tried to dress like a strong leader. And they could look, as particularly since the majority of the young guys in the NBA are black young men, they could look at me as a black man and see that this is how a man carries himself. This is how a Christian man, this is how a Christian black man carries himself. Strong, firm, not, acting foolish and crazy and chasing all the skirts and all that kind of stuff. Nobody could ever truthfully accuse me of anything like that, because I tried to maintain my godly standards. And as a man and as a man of God and as a black man, I wanted to keep all that visible. And I hope that those are the things that they remember me by.
Perfect. Look, the book is out. I have a copy. My wife has a copy. He has a copy in his hands. Where can they get the book?
You can go to my website, scottbradleyministries.vpweb.com. That's one word. Let me go through that again. Scott Bradley Ministries, plural ministries, V as in Victor, P as in Paul, vpweb.com. You can go there, or you can simply go straight to my Cash App, which is $Brad. That's a derivation of my name, BRAD, $BRAD 2538. or go to my Zelle, which will take you directly to the bank, which is brad2538@yahoo.com. Again, you do that. The book is $22.50. You can go either one of these ways. Or lastly, you can send a check or money order to my P.O. Box, P.O. Box 8044, Romeoville, Illinois, 60446. Send your check or money order for $22.50, and we will get the book right out to you. And I would encourage you to get it because I think I got a good story to tell, a lot of insight, a lot of stories, good, bad, and different. But I think you will be blessed.
Y'all get the book, Zelle it, Cash App it, visit the website. And the cool thing about support, I always say support gets support. And if you want to keep seeing amazing influencers like the Reverend Bradley here, you got to do two things: YouTube, CV Space K, and on Instagram at CBMK33. It has been a blast. Until next time, guys. Thanks. Hey, what's up, everybody? You like what you saw? Were you entertained? Were you informed? We want to keep seeing amazing content. Subscribe at the link below. YouTube, CV Space K. You connect where all podcasts are streaming: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor. Connect with me. I want to connect with you. Let's enjoy the ride.